Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So glad that you're here. As Grant already mentioned, my name is Alyssa Heffley, and this is my co-chair, Olivia. And we are the Young Leaders co-chairs this year for this event. And we're just so thrilled that you're here. I mean, this may be a record-breaking event for us, which is so exciting. So please keep enjoying your delicious Phoenix Mexican food, but we are going to just talk about a few things while you eat. So first, I'm going to share just a little bit about the mission of Counsel for Life. So the mission of Counsel for Life is to empower women, men, and youth to make life-affirming choices. Counsel for Life advances the mission in two key ways. So the first part is that we educate. We educate about the humanity of the unborn child and the devastating harm of abortion. Second, we fundraise. We fundraise for outstanding local life-affirming nonprofits that include pregnancy resource centers, maternity homes, adoption and foster care agencies, and post-abortion support and healing. These agencies meet women exactly where they are with compassion and non-judgment. They walk alongside vulnerable moms and their babies during pregnancy, after the baby is born, for life. These agencies provide mentoring and vital services and resources so that moms can bravely choose life for their baby and be equipped to be a parent. So for the past 24 years, CFL has raised and funded more than $14 million to 75 life-affirming agencies across North Texas. On fundraising, we have educated thousands. And 5 years ago, we took the proven CFL model to Waco. Have any Baylor Bears in here? Yeah? Or we have a vibrant Central Texas affiliate. Now we've set our sights for Fort Worth, working on launching a West Texas affiliate over there. Yet there is so much to celebrate, but we must also acknowledge the grim reality. The trends are alarming. Americans continue to support access to abortion. Did you know that 7 out of 10 state ballot measures won last November to enshrine abortion rights in state constitutions through all 9 months of pregnancy, right up until birth? Even babies born alive after botched abortions are not protected, but our U.S. Senate failed to pass the Born Alive Protection Act. Abortion advocates will assuredly continue to introduce more and more extreme measures. Last year, abortion increased in tragic numbers. It was the leading cause of death nationwide and across the world. In 2024 alone, 1 million babies in the U.S. were aborted. That's 98 abortions per hour. 73 million babies were aborted in the world last year. It's just tragic to think about. Texas does have one of the strongest abortion bans in the nation, but thousands of babies are still aborted in Texas and the DFW Metroplex. Chemical and destination surgical abortions are surging. Chemical abortion pills flow illegally into Texas. Women cross Texas state lines to obtain surgical abortions in states where abortion is illegal. To make this shift from a culture of death to a culture that values life, we must transform hearts and minds. So now my friend Olivia is going to share some hope-filled, encouraging news.
Thank you, Alyssa. As y'all can see, I have the easier part here. So a bit of a bright news, a bit of a light shining on the pro-life cause. There are a few points that we need to acknowledge. First, we rejoice that state and national leadership spoke clearly and courageously at the March for Life in Washington, D.C. on January 24th. Yes, big whoop for that. To stand proudly for families and for life. We rejoice that President Trump pardoned and released pro-life individuals who were jailed for praying outside abortion facilities. We are grateful for the many efforts to stop the flow of millions of our taxpayer dollars into the coffers of Planned Parenthood. We celebrate the reinstatement of the Mexico City policy that bans federal tax dollars from funding international agencies that provide abortion services. Let that sink in. And yet, as Alyssa noted, the culture embraces abortion rights. According to a 2024 study performed by the Pew Research Center, 65% of Americans support abortion being legal in all or most cases. This is a 4% increase from 2022. Abortions are increasing, and support for abortion access, especially among young adults, is increasing. How do we reverse that trend? We believe we will reverse it with CFL educational events, which brings us to you all sitting right here, right now, tonight. Only when we educate hearts and when we educate minds can a preborn baby, who is unequivocally a human being, who deserves life, be able to be chosen as life without hesitation. Only when we educate hearts and minds will women and men lovingly choose to place their child for adoption when they are unable to parent their child. And only when we educate hearts and minds will women and men bravely come forward to find healing and recovery from their abortion experience. We believe education will unite us to create a culture of life. Which is why you have been given 3 things to take home with you. A bit better than a party paper, in my humble opinion. So if you look at the table in front of you, the first item you will see is the 1-minute pro-life defense that gives you the words, the logic, and the confidence to stand bravely for human life. If y'all are like me, you'll put it in your bedroom so you can walk by it every day and think about it for a sec. The trifold gives you the information you need to tell your friends about the vast resources available to a woman in an unplanned pregnancy. Our beneficiary agencies are outstanding. Please talk about the work they do and the services they offer. And the upcoming CFL events card provides the opportunity for you to invite your friends to our events so that together we can change hearts and minds. You can see our free spring events on your card, and with great excitement, we announce that our Celebrating Life Luncheon will be on November 3rd of this year. Thank you for partnering with us to create a culture of life in our country. We so appreciate you being here tonight. And we also want to thank El Phoenix for graciously providing this space for us to gather and to celebrate life with one another. With that, I'd like to bring back Grant to continue as master of ceremony.
Thanks, Olivia. I really appreciate it. And on behalf of Council for Life, a big thank you to El Phoenix, as we've mentioned. This is a great meal tonight. And I also want to thank Jack Bowles, valet, tonight for serving us well. And we're just really grateful for everybody involved in putting on this event. And so, most importantly, thank you for being here. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce Miss Abby Johnson. So we're excited to have Abby with us. Abby went to work for Planned Parenthood, believing she would be helping women. After serving as a volunteer while attending Texas A&M, she worked her way up to be director of Planned Parenthood's College Station Clinic. All of that changed when Abby experienced a dramatic transformation. Desperate and confused, Abby left her job in the abortion industry and swore that she would expose the abortion for what it truly is. Today, Abby travels across the globe sharing her story, advocating for the unborn, and reaching out to abortion clinic staff who still work in the industry. One of Abby's ministries, And Then There Were None, has helped almost 700 abortion workers leave the abortion industry and come to a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. Can we get an amen for that? Abby has gone on to write several best-selling books, including Unplanned, Walls Are Still Talking, and Fierce Mercy. Unplanned was later made into a major motion picture, which, if you haven't seen it, I promise you after tonight, you're going to want to see it. Abby hosts her own podcast, Politely Rude, and she recently authored a children's book titled What's in Mommy's Tummy. Abby's greatest blessing is her vocation of wife and mother. She lives in Texas with her husband and 8 beautiful, precious children. So can we give a warm welcome to Abby Johnson?
Thank you all so much. It's so great to be here with you all, and good to hear that there's a few Aggies here in the building. So, really great to be with all of you. I do live outside of Austin with my husband Doug and our 8 children. I know it's so many kids. When I was valeting my car tonight, my license plate says 8 kids on it. And when I was getting out of my car, the valet said, "What does your license plate mean?" And I said, "I have 8 kids." And he was like, "What?" I said, "I know, I have 8 kids." And he was like, "Are you serious?" And that's often the attitude that a lot of people have. But he was like, "That's amazing, what a blessing." So a lot of people find it hard to believe when you have a large family, but it is fun. And people ask all the time, "Oh my gosh, what's it like having a large family?" Especially during COVID. People are like, "Oh my gosh, aren't you scared with all these kids? Like, there's so many kids, and aren't you scared?" You know, everybody's gonna get COVID. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I think our house was ground zero for COVID. Like, it's so disgusting in our house all the time. I think we were the original carriers of COVID. So it's fun. It's fun having all these kids. It's fun just managing so much chaos. Yeah. And a funny story. I have my kids are very, very rarely sick. When they are, though, it spreads throughout, the entire family. And people ask me, like, what's, if you could say, like, what are some of the disadvantages of having a large family? Stomach viruses. That's it. That is the only, like, if I could say, like, I don't think having a big family is that expensive. I mean, I don't think, people are like, "Oh, the cost." I don't believe that. I think you make do and hand-me-downs and all this kind of stuff. But stomach viruses, that's it. That's the only disadvantage. And my kids are not super prone to getting like viruses and stuff because they're gross. And I'll give you an example of how they're gross. My son Carter let me tell you my ages of my kids. So my oldest is 18 and she's graduating this year, and we'll probably be going to A&M next year because that's what you do. And if you're from an Aggie family. And so, and then I have 4 boys in a row. They're 12, 11, 10, and 9. And hence the disgustingness in my house. And then we have twin girls that are 7. And then I have a little boy that's 5. And so my Carter, my 10-year-old, is never ever sick. He never gets sick. He's never been on an antibiotic. I've never had to take him to the doctor for anything. He never an ear infection, never. Okay. And people are like, "Gosh, Carter is like, has the best immunity. Like, what does he do to like be so healthy?" I'm going to tell you. Carter will put anything in his mouth. Okay. So he has all this natural immunity. So one time we were at a water park and there was a lazy river there, right? Everybody knows the lazy river. Okay. So we're on the lazy river and I was like watching him float by and I see that Carter is chewing on something. And I'm like, "Carter, what are you eating?" And he says, "Gum." And I don't give my kids gum for obvious reasons. And I said, "Where did you get that gum?" And he says, "From under that table over there." And most moms would be like, "Oh my gosh, spit that out immediately." But I was like, "Does it still have flavor?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he kept floating by. So if you want to know how to have the immune system of Carter Johnson, you just eat gum. We used gum under tables. So no, it's really fun. It's really fun being a mom of many, and I love it. And I feel very, very blessed. I feel very, very blessed that God has, in his mercy, given me a second, third, and fourth chance at being a mom, being a wife, just very undeserved grace, because that's who God is. And that is his character, that he is a loving and forgiving and gracious and good God. A lot of people ask about my upbringing, like what my life was like. I think people expect that someone who worked in the abortion industry must have grown up in a super pro-choice house, but that's not true. I grew up in a very pro-life home, not a pro-life home where my parents were going to the March for Life or they worked in pregnancy centers or anything, but pro-life in word, for sure. I grew up in church. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and certainly in youth group and youth choir and all of the church things. And every time the doors of the church were open, we were there. My dad was a deacon in the church, and so we were very involved. My parents taught me the biblical pathway to marriage, which was abstinence. And so I think my parents just thought, Abby is going to follow that path because our little girl is going to do everything we have told her to do. And she's not going to deviate from this path that we have taught her. And so she'll be fine. So we don't need to talk about these really difficult topics with our little girl. And so they didn't talk about it. And I think, too, it was just a different time in our society. I'm 44 years old. I was born in 1980. This was not a time where women were standing up at podiums and shouting their abortion. This was not a time where women were wearing T-shirts that said, "I've had an abortion." I was not too long ago at a rally and a woman was walking around with a shirt that said, "I've had 10 abortions." This was a time where sin was still coupled with shame, where people were not proud of their sinful behavior. We don't live in those times anymore. People are very proud of their sin. There is no shame that accompanies sin in our current society. And I think my parents just thought, well, you know what? She goes to church and she goes to youth group, and certainly church is handling all of these really difficult topics for us so that we don't have to do it. And then the church thought, oh, the parents are handling all of these really, really difficult topics, so we don't have to. And so nobody was talking about any of that. And so I went to college very naive. I went to college really sheltered. I grew up in this really sheltered little bubble, which was beautiful at the time, but it created a ignorance. Just in the purest sense of the word, I was ignorant. And I step on campus and I'm there with, almost 60,000 students and very ignorant about the world and about the sins that are surrounding me. And so I got involved with Planned Parenthood just out of sheer ignorance, not understanding what the organization was, not knowing that all of the things that they were telling me were lies. This woman that I met, her name was Debbie, and she was telling me about how Planned Parenthood provides all of these great services to women, that they help women, and everybody wants to help women, right? And that they help poor women, low-income women. And I mean, you better want to help low-income women, or you're just a bigot. And she told me that, growing up pro-life, that was a good thing, but pro-lifers were just misguided, that they did not understand. They didn't see the big picture, that they didn't understand that if women didn't have access to safe and legal abortion, they were going to go to back alley abortion clinics. And all of this was new for me. I had never heard any of this before. And so I didn't understand that when she was telling me about back alley abortions, I didn't understand that what actually takes place in these supposed back alley abortion clinics is actually no different than what takes place today inside of safe and legal abortion clinics. It's no safer. It's the same. Women are treated poorly and babies are murdered. Same. But I didn't know that. And when she talked about helping low-income women and helping these poor women, I didn't understand that what she actually meant was that Planned Parenthood intentionally places 79% of their abortion facilities in what is considered super minority neighborhoods, where at least 85% of the population in those neighborhoods are minority people, so that they can live out the dream of their founder, Margaret Sanger, to eliminate the African American population. And they're doing it. Her dream is literally coming to fruition because in some states in this country, the abortion rate is higher than the live birth rate. And it's happening right in front of us. But I didn't know that. There were so many things I did not understand about Planned Parenthood. She went on and on about abortion being health care, but I didn't know that abortion could never be considered health care, because health care is to heal. And abortion, in order for an abortion to be deemed successful, a unique and individual human being must be killed. And that is the antithesis of health care. That's why we can never call abortion health care. We must never call abortion health care. It's the opposite of health care. I didn't know all of this. And so I was roped in. And I thought, well, this must be a good thing. But you know what? I knew what I was doing was wrong. And I'm going to tell you how I knew. Because I was raised in a family that knew and loved the Lord. And I was raised with God-fearing parents who have been married for 48 years and have always put the Lord first in our home. And when I started working for Planned Parenthood, that day that I signed up to be a part of Planned Parenthood, I did not go home and tell my parents. And that's how I knew that what I was doing was wrong. I tell young people all the time, if you have grown up in a Christian home with a solid Christian foundation, with parents who love the Lord, don't ever trust a decision you would not tell them about. That is a life lesson you can take to the bank. I didn't tell my parents I was working at Planned Parenthood for a year and a half. I hid it from them, I lied about it, and I justified it to myself. Because that is how we live in sin. Any sin, that's how we live in sin. We make it okay in our head. We justify it in our head. Anything. Lust, pornography, gambling addiction, adultery, anything. Abortion, and anything that we do, lying, gossip, anything we do, we justify it by saying, well, it's not really that big of a deal. Or, well, everybody's doing it. Oh, well, she started it first. We justify it. And that's how we make it okay. If you have to justify something that you're doing, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But I wasn't well formed in my faith. I knew the Lord, but I didn't know how to live out my faith every day. And there's a difference. There's a Bible verse that talks about that there will be times in life where God will set before you life and death. And what are we to choose? Life. There were many, many times in my journey with Planned Parenthood where God set before me life and death, goodness and wickedness, sin and righteousness, Satan and Jesus. Many, many times. One of the earliest times I can remember was while I was on a little tour of the facility where I was now volunteering, and I was touring with this young man named Aaron. He was a fun guy, fun, tall guy, big guy. He had this great big laugh, and he was just kind of the jokester of the clinic, and he was walking me around the facility, and he was showing me all these different things, and there was a keypad, and on the keypad, it was numbers, but then also alphanumeric characters. And he tells me to get in this door, the code is 2229. And I said something like, I'm bad at remembering things. And he said, oh, you won't forget it because that spells baby. And he threw his head back and he laughed really big. And right then, that was the first time I remember God setting in front of me life and death. Good versus evil. And to me, in that moment, that didn't square with what I had just heard from Debbie, who had recruited me into Planned Parenthood. Because when I first met her, she had told me that at Planned Parenthood, they're there to reduce the abortion number. Planned Parenthood, they are there to help women on the most devastating day of their life. That they are there because abortion is a tragedy. That it's the most difficult decision that a woman will ever make in her life. And they are just there to accompany them on the worst day of their lives. It's so difficult. It's so hard. And that's why they're there. To be the good guys on a really bad day. So this didn't make sense to me. Because he was making a joke. And so I couldn't figure it out. Was abortion a tragedy? Was it devastating? Was it the most difficult decision a woman would ever make, or was it a joke? And right then, I knew that I should choose life. I knew that I should walk out that back door. I knew that I should leave, but I didn't have the courage. And so I just kind of laughed along with him, knowing that it wasn't funny, knowing that the words that were coming out of his mouth were wicked. And I just laughed along, and we just kept going through the building. And we got into a room called the POC lab. POC stands for Products of Conception. That's, of course, the baby. And the POC lab in the abortion clinic is kind of like the holy of holies. It's like the place where very few people are allowed to enter. You know, you've got to be pretty high up on, you know, in management to go in. Very few people have access to actually do the job, to piece the body parts of the babies back together. And so he was showing me this room, and there was a freezer in the room. And I remember asking a question about this freezer. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, yeah, that freezer, that's where we keep the body parts of the babies. We keep the body parts in that freezer until the medical waste company comes to pick them up." And he laughed and he said, "We call this freezer the nursery." And again, this big laugh came out of him. And again, set before me was life and death, good and evil. And again, I didn't have the courage to walk away. And these moments happened over and over and over again for several years. God would constantly put these little moments in front of me, just asking me, "Are you ready to choose me? Are you ready to leave? Are you ready to walk away from evil?" And over again, I didn't have the courage. And then one day, my boss called me in to the POC room. I had not been working back there yet. And, but I was told that she wanted me back in the room. So I walked back there. And I was standing in just the threshold of the door. And she was standing there. There was a lot of counter space in that room. And on the counter was a large X-ray light box. Like, you know, you might see in older movies. Now everything's digital. But you used to have a big X-ray light box that hung up on the wall. And you would stick an X-ray in it and you could see your bones, right? Now everything's digital on a computer. But back in the day, there was a big X-ray light box that hung up on the wall, okay? And so we had an X-ray light box, but it was sitting on the counter. And it was turned on. And sitting on that X-ray light box was a 9x13, just a normal size, clear glass Pyrex baking dish. Just something you would use to cook a casserole or to cook brownies. And she had put just a tiny bit of water in the bottom. And she was standing there, and on top of it, there was a hand towel, like a tea towel, like a kitchen towel, spread over the top of it. And she was standing there, and in each hand, she was holding tweezers. Long, 10 to 12 inch stainless steel tweezers. And she called me in to come closer to her. So I did. And she handed me the tweezers that were in her left hand. And she said, "Are you ready?" And I wasn't exactly sure what I was agreeing to, but I said, "Yes, I'm ready." And she ripped the towel off the top of the baking dish. And I looked down, and she had already reassembled the body parts of a 12-week-old child. And I had never seen anything like that before. And I could see everything. I could see the tiny little backbone. I could see the baby's eyes. I could see the baby's heart. I could see all of this child's organs. It was just so detailed. And she looked at me and she was smiling, looking at me. And she said, "Go ahead, play with it." And as I looked in this dish, looking at this child, I felt nothing. Just nothing. Because every time that you choose evil over goodness, every time you choose the enemy over the Lord, every time you choose death over life, your heart grows harder. There's a callus that forms over your heart. And I had made that choice so many times. And my heart was so cold. It was so hard. It was so calloused. And so I was looking at this baby that just minutes ago was safe and warm and alive in his mother's womb, and I felt nothing. I was numb. Because when you live a life of sin, sin will drain your soul. It makes you unfeeling, unable to see the value and the humanity in others. And that's how I lived for years. Until one day, I was called in to assist with an ultrasound-guided abortion. I had never done anything like that before. I was the director of the clinic. I'm not a nurse. I have no medical education. I have my doctorate in counseling, but I am not, I have no medical credentials. And I was called in to assist in this abortion. Ultrasound guidance is not typically used during an abortion procedure. We used an ultrasound to determine how far along the woman is in her pregnancy so that we knew how much to charge her for the abortion. But after we were able to find out how far along she was in the pregnancy, the ultrasound was rolled away and it was not used again. And so I knew how abortions were performed. I had been in the room before during a typical sort of blind standard abortion, how we usually did them. But I had never witnessed a live abortion on an ultrasound where you can actually see the child die. I had never seen that before. To my knowledge, an abortion like that had never even been committed at my facility because it's just very rare. It's just not done. But we had a visiting doctor and he wanted to show me what it looks like. He thought it would be a good learning opportunity for me because I was the director of the clinic and I was rising up very quickly at the National Abortion Federation, and I was in all of these super secret abortion meetings, and I was meeting all of these people, and I'm having, meetings with Hillary Clinton and people in Congress and doing all of these fabulous, amazing things for the Democratic Party. And he thought I needed to actually see a live abortion. He thought it would solidify my understanding of the need for abortion. And so I went in. I was asked to hold the ultrasound probe on the woman's abdomen. I did, as I was told. We did the measurement. We found out the woman was 13 weeks along. I looked up at the ultrasound. I could see the image. I could see every part of the baby. I could see the head, the arms, the legs. I could see the heart beating very rapidly. I could see everything. And I remember I was trying to convince myself that this was not a baby, right? Because I had been taught abortion science. And abortion science teaches us that a pregnancy only magically turns into a baby when the mother decides that the pregnancy is wanted. So if a mother decides that the pregnancy is unwanted, then that pregnancy is just waste. It's trash. It's nothing. It's just something to be discarded. And this woman was lying on an abortion clinic table. So certainly this pregnancy was unwanted. And so it was just trash. I mean, I had my daughter Grace at the time. And when I was pregnant with Grace at 12 and 13 weeks along, she was a baby. But somehow this fetus at the same gestational date and size and age was not. And I was trying to make that make sense in my head, and I was feeling this apprehension. I was feeling very nervous. I realize now it was not apprehension. I realize now it was conviction. It was actually the Holy Spirit coming into my heart, because he was about to blow that callus off of my heart and turn my heart of stone into a heart of flesh. But I saw the suction cannula. Suction was not yet turned on. I watched it go into the woman's uterus. I watched it get closer and closer to the side of the baby. And when it finally touched his side, the baby jumped. And he began flailing his arms and legs as if he was trying to move away from the abortion instruments, but there was nowhere for him to go. People ask me sometimes, I was asked today, do you think the baby felt pain? And I don't know if that little boy felt pain, but I am pretty sure that he felt panic. Just like any of us would feel fear and panic if someone was trying to end our lives. That's what it looked like he felt. And when the doctor had everything in the right position, he told the technician to turn on the suction machine, and he said, "Beam me up, Scotty." And the suction was turned on, and I watched this tiny, helpless child be torn apart in his mother's womb. And I realized then that what I had just witnessed was not choice. That child did not have a choice that day. It was not health care. No one was healed of anything that day. It was not justice of any kind. We say abortion is reproductive justice. There was no justice to be had that day. I realized that what I had witnessed was the deliberate, it was the intentional killing of a unique an individual, innocent human being. And we already have a word for that in our society. You know what it is? It's murder. That's what I had witnessed. I know most of you in here are young, and sometimes it's hard to defend these sorts of beliefs. It's countercultural now to be against abortion. It's countercultural to stand up for Christ. It's countercultural to do the right thing in our society. It's much easier to just tolerate sin. But I'm here to tell you that tolerating sin led to the greatest destruction of my life. Tolerating sin leads to apathy. And one day at the end of our lives, we are not only going to be held account for what we have done, but we will also be held account for what we have failed to do. We are being told, particularly in the state of Texas, we are being told a lot of things that are untrue. And I think those untruths lead us to apathy. And so I want to clear up some of those untruths. There was just a report that came out yesterday from a pro-life legislative group that said, in the state of Texas, it said only 135 abortions were committed in the state of Texas last month. I want to tell you that is a blatant lie. Thousands of abortions were committed in the state of Texas last month. They were done through pills. They were done through chemical abortion. I've had a chemical abortion. It was the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through in my life. I heard my baby come out of my body and hit the shower floor. And I knew my child was too big to go down the drain, so I knew I had to pick my child up off the ground. Thousands of women are going through this every month, hundreds a day, right here in our state that has supposedly banned abortion. Abortion is not banned in the state of Texas, and that is a fact. It is legal to obtain abortion pills in the state of Texas. It is legal to own abortion pills in the state of Texas. It is legal to consume abortion pills in the state of Texas. And it's happening each and every day. And pro-life groups across the state are lying to you because they want to celebrate a win that does not exist. If there was ever a time to be bold about the truth, if there was ever a time to proudly proclaim the value of human life, it is now. It is today. I think a lot of people, particularly young people, they kind of look at my life and they go, oh my gosh, like, you live such a cool life. Like you meet all these famous people and you do all these cool things. You spoke for Trump and you know all these people and, you do all this neat stuff. Let me tell you something. would give it all up. I would give it all up if I could take back the 2 children that I murdered. I would give it all up if I could give those mothers the 22,000 children that I helped them kill while I worked at Planned Parenthood. This life that I live, this story that I tell, this is not the story that you want. And you may look at me and say, I'm not a high schooler, I'm in college or whatever. I was in college too when I got involved with Planned Parenthood. I was into my first marriage when I had my second abortion. You're never too old to get entrapped into sin. We did abortions on pastors' daughters. We did abortions on pastors' wives. Don't think that you are above the enemy. Don't think that you can outsmart him. Because you're not. And you don't want the testimony that I have. I would give it all back. I don't want to meet with any of the people that I meet with. I don't want to have the life that I have. Because I also don't want to have the regret that I have. I don't want the souls of 22,000 babies on my conscience for the rest of my life. You know what kind of life you want? You want the kind of life where you listen to a story like mine and you go, I can't even relate to what that woman is saying. That lady has had such a crazy life. That lady is a nut job. I can't even relate to anything that she has done. That's the kind of life you want. You want a life where you have always walked in the will of God. Where you have always walked in his light. That's the kind of life you want. Trust me. You don't want this. And if you aren't living that life right now, if you are straying down a path that you know Satan delights in, friends, it is never too late to turn that around. It is always okay to make a U-turn and turn back to Christ. He is always waiting. Once you are his child, he will continue to pursue you until you come home. It's never too late to make the right decision. It's never too late to walk in the will of God. I'm going to open it up for questions now. And if any of you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them for you. It just takes one person and then everybody else. Yeah, go ahead. So that's a good question. So the first question, that's a good question. So when you look at the pro-abortion movement, you generally see women who kind of make up the pro-abortion movement. And a lot of women, it's kind of funny because a few years ago, I saw this article. It was like in Vanity Fair or something, and it was like, you know, who are pro-choice women, and it was like a picture of Jane Fonda, Cecile Richards, and Barbara Streisand, and I was like, great, postmenopausal women who will never have an abortion. Okay, fantastic. That's the pro-choice movement. They like to show you, you know, like, oh, to be pro-woman, you must be pro-abortion. But the reality is that the pro-abortion movement has been born, bred, and fed by men. So, you know, who decided the Roe v. Wade case? All male justices, right? Who started NARAL? Like, who started our country's largest, and still today, our country's largest abortion rights activism group? Two men, Larry Lader and Dr. Bernard Nathanson. Who are the abortion industry's most prominent donors? Men. Who are the men? Who are the people that are killing babies? Who are abortionists? Men. You very rarely see female abortionists. In the background of the abortion movement has always been men. Always. And that is who is funding it. That is who is propping it up. And that is who is in the background. On the front side, though, you know, in the forefront, they show you angry women. The majority of the pro-abortion movement are women who have had abortions. And they're hurting. But their hurt comes across as anger. But they're just hurting so, they're just so desperately hurt that they can't decipher the difference between anger and hurt. There are some people in the pro-abortion movement, like my boss that I worked with at Planned Parenthood. If you watched Unplanned, I just want to tell you, my boss was 20 times more despicable than how she was presented in the film. People are like, how can that even be? I promise you she was. You know, she joked about babies being born alive. She would, in the POC lab, she would like pick up their bodies and like pretend they were dancing. She was just evil. Like evil had just overcome her. She was raised Catholic. She went to Catholic school, but she was hurt by the church, and she allowed that hurt to just overcome her, and evil came into her life, and that just became a part of who she is. She worked at Planned Parenthood for over 30 years. She retired with them, and it was just like a part of her life. There are people in the industry that are like that, but the majority of people who work in these abortion clinics are single moms. They're poor. They're uneducated. Majority of women who work just day to day, like hourly work in the abortion clinic, a lot of them do not even have high school educations. Just as the abortion industry, you know, we hear this all the time in the pro-life movement, the abortion industry targets low-income women to come in and have abortions, like to be their consumers. They target that same population to become workers there. 70% of women who work in the abortion industry have had abortions themselves. And a lot of our clients that come through and then there were none tell us that they were actually recruited to work in the abortion clinic while they were having their abortion. So, I mean, this is a despicable industry. They prey on the vulnerable, not just the people who are, you know, going in to have abortions, but also the people that they recruit to work there. So, yeah, the second question, when I left Planned Parenthood, I had no intention of being public with my story. To be perfectly honest, I was very embarrassed by what I had done. I felt really stupid because I'd worked there for so long and just felt like, why did I not see this before? And so I had no desire to go public with my story. I was like, I'm trained to be a therapist, so I'm just going to go hang a sign on my door and just be a therapist and be quiet about it and never tell anybody I worked at Planned Parenthood. But when I left, Planned Parenthood sued me. They tried to get a gag order against me so that I would never be able to tell anyone about everything that had happened in the clinic that I had witnessed. And when they got the temporary restraining order, they also sent a press release out to the Associated Press. And so then all the media picked it up and they were like, what are you trying to keep her from telling us? Like, what does she know that you don't want us to know? And then all of a sudden I'm like on CNN and Fox News and even MSNBC. And that was when they decided they hated me. And so that was kind of when I realized, oh my gosh, like I know information that Planned Parenthood does not want me to say in public. And so once I won the court case, I said, well, I immediately need to start telling that information. So that was really what propelled me to start doing this. And God opened a door and I just felt like I needed to walk through it. So if it wasn't, God, of course, but if it wasn't for Planned Parenthood, I would literally be working in an office as a therapist right now. So, thanks Planned Parenthood. So, yeah. Are we done? Can we do one more? Yeah, the largest donor to Planned Parenthood, to the abortion industry in general, is Warren Buffett. So, and he owns everything. He owns Berkshire Hathaway. Berkshire Hathaway owns everything. So if you have stock in Berkshire Hathaway, dump it. He owns like Kellogg's. Like Johnson & Johnson are big donors to Planned Parenthood. Like the people that make baby stuff. Almost the Cleveland Browns. Sorry if you're a Browns fan. Almost every diaper brand in the United States supports the abortion industry. It's weird. So if you need diapers, buy from EveryLife. It's bizarre, like how many groups support Planned Parenthood. There are investment groups out there. One is called the Timothy Plan. One's called Inspire Investing. And they are investment companies that work to ensure that any investments that you make do not go to companies that support the abortion industry or the LGBT agenda. And that's what they do, that's what they do full time. So there's other companies like that. But it's everywhere. Berkshire Hathaway is like one of the largest companies in the country. And their little tentacles are everywhere. So you just have to be wise and be careful. And, it's like Susan G. Komen gives to Planned Parenthood. And they're out here saying that they want to eradicate breast cancer, but we know that abortion has a direct link to breast cancer. So it's like, you got to make that make sense. Right? So it just seems like they're funding the thing that they say they want to eliminate. A lot of charities give to Planned Parenthood. So if you're going to give your money, give them to pro-life organizations. I just recommend that people vet the organizations, the charitable giving that you're giving, and make sure that you give it to reputable organizations. There's no better organizations to give to than to give to pro-life organizations. So anyway, that's all. Thank you, guys.